Oh, perfect. Oh, perfect. Oh, we're good, huh? Isn't it? Okay. Yeah, yeah.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Judge Kathy Cox, and I'm honored to have been asked to preside over the ceremony here this afternoon. We're gathered for the Bar Association's annual memorial service. I want to start by welcoming the family and the friends and the colleagues of the departed members who we celebrate here today, along with others who have joined us to hear about their accomplishments and their lives. I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that I'm sorry this isn't being done in person, but obviously it's prudent that we're doing it remotely as we are here today. And I want to particularly just commend the Bar Association on figuring out how to continue this and do this ceremony here. I appreciate the efforts to continue this tradition. I don't know if this service is unique to the Baltimore County Bar Association, but I do know it's an event that's done annually that I particularly value. Every time I attend it, I've learned something new about someone that maybe I knew as a colleague but didn't know personally. And often I come here and I learn about other members of the association who I never crossed paths with and haven't met. And you can celebrate and appreciate the contributions they've made, not only to the Bar Association and to the profession, but to their families and their communities. It makes me truly appreciate the diversity of the range of talents we have through the members of this association. And I think it's a great tradition that we honor each year those members who have passed. I also think there's a benefit to reminiscing and celebrating someone's life not after a little time has passed from their passing. I think you get past the immediacy of the loss and you can come together and really remember and more joyfully celebrate all that they've accomplished and all that they've contributed. I want to thank the family, friends, and colleagues for sharing their memories of the individuals we honor today, those being Judge Patrick Kavanaugh, Michael Connolly, Howard Gerber, Lewis Kaplan, Martin Moylan, and Bob Winkler. When you look at them and all that they've done, it really gives you an appreciation of the range of talents we have in the association that we remember and we celebrate today. So thank you for joining us.
Let us pray. Gracious God, in the midst of our current challenges and these troubling times, we are so grateful for this opportunity to come together and focus our attention on the lives and memories of our departed friends and colleagues. Allow us to celebrate them as we are inspired by them, their lives well lived, their boundless love for their families, their selfless service to their communities, and their passion for the law. Let their examples remind us of what truly matters in this life. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Good afternoon, Judge Cox, distinguished members of the bench and bar, and to the friends and family of our departed colleagues. On behalf of the Baltimore County Bar Association, I wish to extend a warm welcome to our annual memorial service. We have gathered everyone together virtually today to honor and celebrate the lives of those members who have passed on in the last year. Although we cannot meet together in person as in the past, it is important to honor these members, family, friends, and colleagues will share with us today thoughts and memories of the departed. This ceremony is a celebration of our honorees and the contributions they made to our legal community. I will first call upon Kay Alshung, who will offer remarks on behalf of Lewis Kaplan.
Thank you, Kevin. To echo Judge Cox, it is a different way of remembering somebody when time has passed. And I'm glad to be doing this now because the year that's passed since we lost Lewis has revealed ways that we miss him that I could not have recognized in 2019. I met Lewis in 2012, which was 2 years after my own father had passed. And Lewis was my first law partner and the person who mentored me as I began my legal career. He taught me the importance of professionalism, the importance of being the lawyer that your client expects you to be, showing up well-dressed because clients want you to look the part. Lewis was a well-dressed man, and I will never live up to that standard, but he showed me the importance of making the effort. He also taught me the importance of billing, making sure you're making your clients aware of the value that you're bringing them, and he will be remembered fondly for that. He spent more than 50 years as a member of the Maryland Bar, which is an incredible accomplishment. He worked both in the public sector for the IRS as well as in private practice. In Lewis's time in private practice, he worked primarily in fiduciary law. He did estate planning, estate administration, trust administration, and guardianship administration. Over the course of his career, he served as a fiduciary for probably 1,000 people, managing their finances, making sure that their bills were paid when they could no longer do that for themselves or on behalf of the beneficiaries of their estates. Fiduciary law is an interesting area. It can be a little like family law without custody disputes. And you have to be able to manage people's expectations and manage relationships. And whether or not Lewis set out to do that in his career, he did it. He rose to the occasion. This year, of course, we miss Lewis. The experience we've felt as fiduciary lawyers in the last 9 months with the working with clients who are panicked about doing their own planning, but also working with families who are bereaved, who've lost people not just to the COVID virus, but also lost people for other reasons, but were unable to be with them when they passed. These are the types of issues that really lay bare what service we provide to our clients. And in particular, it's revealed to me how important Lewis was, not just to his colleagues here at the law firm, not just to his colleagues, his friends at the bar, but also to the people whose lives he affected on the other side, the wards under guardianship, when you have, he served as guardian for hundreds of people, and when you have a ward under guardianship, you have behind that person a family who has lost already an individual to disease, psychiatric disease or illness or injury. And Lewis interfaced with those families in a compassionate and kind way. And since his loss, I've heard from the mothers of the wards, the siblings of the wards, the children of the wards, to say, where's Mr. Kaplan? Where's that trusted member of my family who's made sure that my son isn't homeless, who's made sure that my son has spending money, who makes sure that the bills get paid and the money is stewarded for that ward's benefit. His impact, like a stone in the pond, the ripples that Lewis created with his compassionate service to those wards and their families, is one thing that, although I recognized it, has continued to impact me, especially in this year of so much loss. So I'm honored to share those memories about Louis, and I'm so grateful for the Bar Association's opportunity to remember him.
Can't hear him. Kevin, I think you're muted.
I apologize. Thank you again, Alice. Next, Stuart Schatt will speak on behalf of Martin Moylan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to pay tribute to Martin Ignatius Moylan. I first met Mr. Moylan when I was a freshman in high school, when I became close friends with his eldest son, Stefan. Coincidentally, Stefan and I went to the same high school, college, and law school, and together we formed an eternal bond and a special friendship. So I basically had known his dad, Martin, my entire adult life. Martin embraced me and treated me as another son to him, and I likewise considered him to be a second father to me. As time went on, our relationship evolved, and I began to consider Martin not only as a mentor, but also as a friend and a colleague. He was 86 years old when he passed. He had lived a full life, and he did his best to enjoy every minute of it. He was born and was raised along with his three brothers and sisters in an Irish section of Baltimore known as the 10th Ward. When he was young, the family struggled during the Depression, but he had the love and support of his immediate and extended family, and he learned many values from this experience. Most importantly, that education, knowledge, and experience could bring him happiness and success. After graduating from high school, he enlisted in the Navy and served on an aircraft carrier in the Caribbean. Although the Navy didn't suit him well, he visited interesting places which broadened his horizons. When he returned home, he got his undergraduate degree and his law degree from University of Baltimore under the GI Bill. Professionally, he initially worked as an attorney in the insurance industry for several years before hanging his own shingle. He was in private practice for over 4 decades in the Baltimore and Towson area and practiced with his son, Christopher, during the latter part of his career. In addition to his private practice, Martin was a public servant, having served on the Maryland Criminal Injuries Compensation Board, the International Association of Criminal Injuries Compensation Board, and he was the chair of the National Association of Crime Victims Compensation Board, helping those that were victims of crimes not only financially, but also helping them to try to restore their character and dignity. Late in his career, he helped the indigent by taking on panel cases from the Public Defender's Office. Outside the practice of law, Martin was the consummate family man. He loved and adored his wife of 54 years, Birgitta. In fact, it was a fairy tale romance of love at first sight when he was able to finagle her phone number from Frank DiFilippo after he saw a picture of the stunning young lady from Sweden in an article in the newspaper about saunas. He was a supporting and loving father to his 2 sons, Stefan and Christopher, and his daughter Martina, and the 7 grandchildren that they provided him, no matter what shenanigans went on at their house on Taplow Road in Homeland. He was very proud of his children's education, careers, and accomplishments. His 2 sons who followed him in his career path, Stefan is a district court judge in Garrett County, Maryland, and Christopher became a patent attorney, while Martina was a psychiatric nurse and later a pharmaceutical sales representative. His desk in the den where they often gathered was an homage to his love and admiration for his family. It was filled with keepsakes and photos of them from all stages of their lives, and he loved to tell stories reminiscing about the past. In all walks of life, Martin was a true gentleman. As an attorney, he was a strong advocate for his clients, but he was always professional, civil, and ethical. And overall, as a person, he was kind, benevolent, and always cheerful. I think the picture of him in the program it suits him well. He was also often mischievous and had a childlike, impish nature. Martin was a character that had a zest for life. He always had a story to tell, a joke to relate, and most certainly a song to sing. Martin was an avid opera fan and had a keen memory of verses from all styles of music. There was barely an occasion where a situation didn't lead to him breaking out in song and belting out lyrics that had relevance to the moment at hand. He was engaging as well as entertaining. He was very well read, very worldly, and very knowledgeable about just about everything under the sun, be it history, geography, literature, music, food and libations, and even science, but he was humble about it. But as much knowledge as he had, he was always eager to learn more. I remember when he was so fascinated about the videotape of the interior of his knee from the arthroscopic surgery that he had, that he was trying to convince everyone to watch it with him. I took a pass on that one. In a way, it was probably a blessing that he passed when he did. He was fortunate to not have to live during these difficult times that we were dealing with. He wouldn't do well in self-isolation. He was too social, collegial, congenial. He was always the life of the party, all the while also being selfless, generous, and compassionate to others. He was a people person. Everyone that knew him loved him. Martin was a parishioner at the Cathedral of Mary, Our Queen, where I'm a parishioner, where his funeral was held. And printed on the mass card was the prayer of St. Francis. The prayer's message is so befitting of Martin and so poignant. Lord, make me the instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is offense, let me bring pardon. Where there is discord, let me bring union. Where there is error, let me bring truth. Where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is despair, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, let me bring your light. Where there is sadness, let me bring joy. O Master, let me not seek as much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that one receives, it is in self-forgetting that one finds, it is in pardoning that one is pardoned. It is in dying that one is raised to eternal life. It was with these mores and ideals that Martin lived his life, taught his children and grandchildren, and counseled his clients. May you rest in peace, Martin Ignatius Moylan.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Next, the Honorable Colleen Cavanaugh will now speak on behalf of her father, the Honorable Patrick Cavanaugh.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Judge Cox, members of the Memorial Committee, colleagues, family, and friends. I am honored to speak in memory of my father, the Honorable Patrick Cavanaugh. So many of the memories that I have of my father are entwined with his practice of the law, his work as a judge, and his participation in this bar association. When my father started practicing law in 1974, there was no internet or social media. Networking was done the old-fashioned way, face-to-face, and my dad loved it. He found the Baltimore County Bar Association to be an invaluable networking tool, not just to build a client base, but as a means of getting to know his colleagues. A quiet man who liked to socialize, my father enjoyed his time spent on county golf outings and at bull roasts. An intelligent but humble man who was always eager to learn, he frequently attended the Bar Association's educational seminars. He found the practice of law to be even more enjoyable when he knew the judges, magistrates, and opposing counsel as people with families and feelings. This didn't mean that any special favors were given. It simply meant that he could be an advocate for his clients while treating everyone else involved in the case with the courtesy and respect he'd give to a friend. It also meant that some cases could be settled over a club sandwich with opposing counsel, where cooler heads prevailed over posturing. When I passed the bar, my father urged me to join the county bar right away. I remember going to my first bar banquet with my dad and being in awe of the sheer number of people that he knew. He was so eager to introduce me to all of them as his daughter, the newly minted lawyer. Although he was my date for the first few banquets, my father was happy to add my husband, Mike, to the mix, and ultimately my brother-in-law, Randolph, joined the fray. Without a doubt, my dad's proudest banquet, and the one I remember most fondly, was in 2007, after I'd taken the bench in the orphans court, and my father and I were able to attend the judge's reception together, leaving Randolph and Mike to carpool. Two of my earliest memories are of attending my father's law school graduation and his swearing in at the Supreme Court. I think that's where my interest in the law took root. It was an interest that I shared with my father throughout his life. I worked summers and school breaks in his law office, fascinated by the variety of clients he met and cases that he tried. I loved to watch him in court. His demeanor was not that much different inside a courtroom than it was out, and perhaps this is what made him such an effective advocate and relatable judge. He never put on airs and always introduced himself as Pat, not Judge Kavanaugh. Although he worked hard, my father's sense of humor and fun were always evident. He was more likely to chuckle at a ridiculous set of facts than to get upset or frustrated by them. In fact, he rarely got upset. He was very even-tempered. He was not one to yell or admonish. I recently found a Father's Day card I'd given to him where I thanked him for his good advice and for not saying, "I told you so," when I didn't follow it. Having my father as my sounding board gave me confidence, and although he rarely needed my advice, my dad liked to talk through matters with me as well. We'd often call one another on our way home from work to trade anecdotes, war stories, and news of the courthouse. Being able to discuss your work with someone who truly understands it is a rare gift that we both treasured. When I was appointed to the circuit court, 4 short months after my father's retirement, my father delighted in the fact that we had made history as the first father-daughter judges in Maryland to sit on the same bench in the same county. I was able to take over my dad's chambers, and I felt, and still feel, his presence in that space every time that I enter it. So many of our family's milestones, both happy and sad, have been marked with the Bar Association and the courthouse family. My father's investiture and retirement, my investiture, my father's portrait ceremony, and his funeral mass last December. Following my father's death, the outpouring of condolence, kindness, and sympathy from fellow attorneys and judges were of great comfort to me and my family. The many anecdotes shared kept my father's spirit alive. 2 short years ago, I was in the unique and honored position of responding from the bench for my father's portrait unveiling. It was such a happy day for our family, and I am so grateful that my father got to hear our speeches praising him as the wonderful father, husband, lawyer, friend, and judge that he was. His portrait now hangs in my courtroom, as well as my home. This is a copy, and I look at it often, and his twinkling blue eyes continue to guide me. Of course, none of us could have imagined on that happy portrait day, a little over a year ago, that a little over a year later, my father would be gone. And I'm thankful to the Baltimore County Bar Association for giving my father that well-deserved day in the sun. Just as I'm thankful for this final opportunity to stand before you now, to remember this wonderful man, my daddy, the always honorable Patrick Kavanaugh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge. Our next honoree is Michael F. Conley. Remarks have been provided by his daughter, Nicole Humphrey. Ms. Humphrey is unavailable to speak today, but has asked me to share the following words about her father. Michael F. Conley was an exceptional man, brilliant attorney, exemplary father, and friend. After many obstacles and hardships in his life, he decided to pursue a law degree at 39 years old. Throughout his college career, he held honors and gained many awards. In 2005, he took the bar exam and passed on his first try. He went through a grueling series of hearings before the Court of Appeals finally decided he was fit to become an attorney. On June 11, 2007, he was sworn into the Maryland State Bar. He was determined to help people in tough situations he once found himself in, and to ensure that every person that walked through our doors obtained excellent legal representation, no matter their background or socioeconomic status. Just this year, he had received the 2020 Law Firm Pro Bono Award from the Pro Bono Resource Center. He was always willing to help anyone in need. He'll be remembered in the hearts of many. Michael F. Connolly was a pillar of his community, a friend to everyone, and counsel to many. He loved his family with everything that he had. On a personal note, I attended law school with Michael about 20 years ago at the University of Baltimore, Evening Division, and I still remember him sitting in the front of class. No matter what class it was, he was up front, constantly raising his hand, participating, engaging with our professors. I more specifically remember his friendliness, his kindness, and his determination. Next, fellow Memorial Committee member Peter McDowell will share thoughts on Howard Gerber. It looks like we have some technical difficulties as far as Pete's concerned. I'm going to ask for Mike Lawler to speak about Robert Winkler, and then I will come back to Howard Gerber. Hey, Mike, could you unmute your mic?
I thought you were going to do it, but anyway,
Okay.
Let me start over. I'm Mike Lawler. I went to high school with Bob. I met him in September of '59 at Mount St. Joe. I lived on 33rd Street and he lived in Towson, and we always would be on the 8th streetcar. As far as I know, Bob lived in Towson pretty much his entire life. Well, his entire life. He had 5 brothers: Bill, Mark, Pat, Mike, and Matt. We, quote, got out of, end quote, St. Joe in 1963. Let me explain. When you go to Catholic school, you don't graduate, you get out. I went on to Loyola College, and Bob went, and in the Army for a couple of years, and Bob went to the University of Maryland. So I was out of touch for about 7 years. When I came out of service, I moved in with my father in Lutherville, and there was a small house fire, and I really think I needed some place to go. And I called Bob, and he had a small apartment in a unit block of Madison Street. And I was going back to night law school at that time. Bob had already passed the bar. And so I moved in, and I distinctly remember the rent was $80 a month, which he and I split. I lived with Bob until I got married in August of 1971. Bob went to Mount Vernon Law School, which at the time I moved in was merging with the University of Baltimore. At the time I lived with Bob, he worked at the Jessup Penitentiary, affectionately known as the Cut. When I moved in, he was practicing with a small law firm in Baltimore City that did civil work, and he really didn't enjoy it that much. I was working as an adjuster at Hartford Insurance in Towson. We would often at night go to the Alcazar Bar, which was on Cathedral and Madison Street, about a half a block from our apartment. And I distinctly remember a 10-ounce draft was 15 cents. And it was a great place to get a cheap meal and dinner at 10:30 at night. One day in 1971, I was at lunch walking around Towson, and I spotted Bob on Pennsylvania Avenue walking towards the courthouse, and I asked him where he was going. He said, "I'm going to get married." So I said, "Come on, man, what are you talking about?" So it turned out that's what he was going to do. So I told my friends to tell my boss I wasn't coming back to work. I was taking a half a day off, and I actually witnessed his wedding at the courthouse in Towson. And then we repaired to a restaurant. A few enough of the people here will remember. It was called the Jade East, now called Nacho Mama's, located next to the Elks Lodge in Towson, where I will be going in about 15 minutes. Around 1974, Bob took a job at the Public Defender's Office in Baltimore County. His uncle, Paul Feely, was the chief public defender in Baltimore County. See how I handle the phones here. Several years later, Bob transferred to the Harford County Office of the Public Defender. And knowing Bob his whole legal career, I believe being a public defender in Harford County was the happiest period in his legal life. When he was replaced after he retired, they replaced him with 2 lawyers. Throughout his legal career, he maintained an office. Excuse me. God damn you. He maintained an office in Baltimore County where he did estates and trusts, and he did wills. He early on was partnered with Joe Ade and the late circuit judge Dana Levitz in a small office on Register Avenue shopping center. In 1986, he rented an office for me in the 606 building on Baltimore Avenue in Towson, and maintained that office until about 4 years ago when his health failed him. If I ever had a complaint about Bob, it was that he did too much free work. He simply refused to charge people for handling, at times, complex matters. It used to irritate me, but it didn't bother him at all. He moved to an assisted living facility due to his illness. It was over on Charles Street. They all have euphemistic names like Broadmead or something like that, but so I can't remember the name of it, but it was just north of Charles and Bologna, the intersection. It was called Brookdale. While he was at Brookdale on North Charles Street, I would bring him his favorite bourbon, Colonel Lee. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not joking. This wasn't exactly the champagne of bourbons. A half a gallon of Colonel Lee at the Beltway Liquors cost $17.95 when it wasn't on sale for $15.95. Bob is survived by his wife, Kathy, and children, Richard and Harley, both successful, and his 5 brothers, and additionally his cousin, a very close friend, Buzz Day. He is also survived by his brothers at the Towson Elks Lodge, having been a member there since 1986. That concludes my remarks. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Michael, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Next, we're going to come back to Peter McDowell, who will be speaking on behalf of Howard Gerber.
Am I good? Yeah. If I'm out of breath, I had to do the 100-yard dash across the street to the Bar Association to use Rachel's computer. May it please the members of the court, Judge Cox, Judge Wilson, and may it please all the members who are attending this year's memorial service in the format that we are. And I'm pleased to be asked to speak on behalf of Howard Gerber. Unless you have gray hair like I do, many of you may not recall Howard. Howard hadn't been in the trial courts all that much in recent years. He was living in Baltimore City. He was practicing out of the Belvedere Hotel, but he wasn't the frequent personality that he used to be in days of yore. He passed away recently at the age of 75, unexpectedly. I remember Howard from a time and an era when I was a young prosecutor in the district court, and it was full of characters, both on the bench and those who appeared before the bench. And many of them were an eclectic crowd of trial lawyers. And they were colorful people like A. Gordon Boone, John Arnick, Pat Kavanaugh, Arnie Zerwitz, Judge Rellis and Judge Pytash. Bob Steinberg and Bob Donadio would frequently haunt the courtrooms and try their cases. And it was a special time when, in the 1980s and 90s, when this was happening. And into this court setting came a quiet and unassuming, always dapperly dressed Howard Gerber, very low key in his demeanor, oftentimes a handkerchief in his lapel or a flower. But let's start with where Howard was from. Howard was born and raised in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He graduated high school in 1962. And then he enlisted in the Marine Corps, and he was proud of his Marine Corps service. And although he saw active duty in Vietnam, I never heard Howard mention any of his experiences, but he was proud as a Marine. And he returned to attend school at the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned a bachelor's degree. Still intellectually curious, Howard went on to obtain a master's degree from Villanova. He moved to Baltimore, which was a city he fell in love with. He fell in love with its charm, and he fell in love with its culture and its people. And he fell in love with the horse track. Howard would go to Pimlico and play the horses. And it was probably that event that occurred there one day that sort of defined his identity to many of us, because Howard backed a horse and he won big. And he used those winnings to open up a bar that was an old bar that went back to the 1700s down in Fells Point. He named it the Horse You Came In On. And it was, like Howard, a charming place. It's said that is the place where Edgar Allan Poe took his last drink. And in fact, there was a sign somewhere on the wall that here's where Edgar Poe had his last drop. But Howard suffered a few lawsuits while he was owner of this pub. And again, this was back in a day when there were only a few pubs in Fells Point. And his reaction to having been sued, rather than be angry, quite frankly, was to go to law school. And so he went to law school and he graduated ultimately from the University School of Law in 1980. And I crossed paths with him for the first time when I was a young assistant. And he was famous for coming into court in a cashmere coat. He sometimes had his assistant with him, usually a very attractive woman, was sort of a signature of his. He was an imaginative attorney. He always had an angle, and he was never afraid to try his case. And he was always polite and courteous of everybody and not a bad word to say about anybody. And I had a couple of trials with Howard that, quite frankly, were unique and characteristic of the things that occurred in district court in those days. And I can remember one case involving a very attractive defendant that he represented, and she had been accused of driving under the influence. And when Howard came into the courtroom and I read the statement of probable cause, and I thought to myself, even though she didn't take the breathalyzer test, this is easy for the state to obtain a conviction in. And, but Howard, he knew the odds, just like in horse racing. He had Judge A. Gordon Boone for his trial attorney or trial judge. And so he tried the case. And I realized soon into the case, after the officer had taken the stand and testified, that his defense was an incredible defense. He had put this lady on the stand, and she testified that she was not in any way intoxicated, that she was running over the cones on the road because it was a detour and it was confusing. And when the officer pulled her over, she thought it was rude. And the entire time she would say something like that, Judge Boone would act aghast at the fact that she had been pulled over and put through these tests. And she even went so far as to demonstrate in her high spiked heel boots how she mocked the officer and wouldn't take the test properly. And I thought, this is insanity. There's no way that I couldn't secure a conviction in this case. But I remember Judge Boone saying this was outrageous. And without Howard even having to give a closing argument, he got his not guilty. He raised his reasonable doubt. He looked at me and just held his hands in the air as if to surrender. And in another case I had with him involving a bunch of people in a bar who were betting on Super Bowl, they had a poster up, and every square in the poster you put in your bet, what the score, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter was going to be, and put in the amount of money you wanted to bet, and you won the pool. And this was an easy one for the Vice Squad, who managed to get all the names, including the bar owners, which was always difficult to prosecute. And you know, it was a real interesting trial. It had Richard Karseski was representing the bar owner, and Dennis Cuomo was representing the barman, and Craig Garfield had somebody, and Howard had somebody, and none of them really had much of a defense, but they tried the case all the same. And it was Howard who grabbed the poster board that was put into evidence with all the names on it, and as he's reading off all the names of the other defendants and not his own, he then reads out, well, look at this. He goes, Mr. McDowell's in for $50. And the courtroom exploded in laughter. And I was a bit embarrassed knowing I hadn't been to the bar, nor had I bet. But there was an interesting reaction amongst everybody in the room. And I thought to myself, you know, he really humanized the situation where we all sometimes take ourselves a little too seriously. And even in a serious moment, he could inject a little humor and a little bit of humanity. And we had Judge Daniels, so everybody was found guilty and got their probation before judgments. But anyway, Howard was a gracious person, and he was a good, gentle, kind presence to find in the courts on the days that he would come in. And I know I miss having had my trials against him. And he has a son, Jason. We have reached out to Jason. He's in California, but the only way we know to reach out to him is through Facebook. And I think that Jason probably checks his Facebook about as much as I do, because we've gotten no replies since. But I know from other people that he had a good relationship and has, or up until his death, a good relationship with his son, Jason. And we made our efforts to reach him. Although a native of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Howard really was one of Baltimore's sons. And I'm not sure if he brought his own charm or took on the charm of our community, but he was a charming and gracious person, and I know he will be missed at the bar.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate that. Now, the Honorable Kathleen Cox will give the response from the bench. Judge?
So on behalf of the judges of Baltimore County, I want to thank the family and friends who contributed to the presentations that we've heard here today. As I said in my opening comments, we always hear something new about someone we thought we knew pretty well, or we learn from the contributions of someone that we never crossed paths with. Speaking for myself today, it was a little bit of both. I've learned a little more about some people I knew and learned a lot about some people I never really crossed paths with at all. I think it goes without saying that 2020 has been a very difficult and challenging year for everyone. And it must be particularly challenging for the family and friends who've suffered a loss in the past year. Every day right now, we are bombarded with statistics that remind us of how fleeting life and health can be, And as we prepare for Thanksgiving next week, which is a time when family and friends traditionally come together, it causes us to sit back and to think more about those who aren't with us. On the eve of that celebration, it's a good time for this Bar Association to remember fondly and to celebrate the lives of the colleagues we've lost and their many contributions, not only to the profession, but to their families and to their communities. I want to thank Kay Alice Young for her comments and reminiscences about her partner, Lou Kaplan. He was someone who was known for excellence in the profession, having devoted the vast majority of his career to trust and estates and guardianship, which, as she mentioned, is really service to clients in some of the most personal matters that they have. He was a member of the bar for more than 50 years and was respected for his excellence. I want to thank Stuart Schapp for the memories he shared of Martin Moylan. And clearly, Stuart knew him not just as a lawyer who became a mentor of sorts, but knew him for a long time through his family and through his sons. It's fair to say that Martin Moylan had a varied and long career. I knew he argued cases in the Court of Appeals. He had a practice in Towson for many years. And it's nice for him that two of the three of his children, two of the three succeeded him in the profession, one of whom is on the bench now in Garrett County. You got through Stuart a real sense that he wasn't just a great professional, but he was a warm, gregarious, strong family man. I want to thank who I always refer to as the gentler Judge Kavanaugh for her memories and reminiscences about her dad, who was probably the person that, at least for myself, and I think for many of the members that I see are on this call, he's the person that within this group that maybe many of us knew best, part because he was a member of the bench and therefore had a larger profile, but largely because Pat Kavanaugh was at every bar event I think I ever went to. He was devoted to the profession. He was devoted to the association. He was well known by many in the legal community, but anybody who knew him knew it wasn't just his presence at the bar, but his devotion to his family and his generosity to others, no matter where they came from or from what part of life what walk of life that really distinguished Pat Kavanaugh. He just plain loved a good time. It's shown in him, and he was a devoted professional. I appreciate that we received the remarks on Michael Connolly from his daughter, Nicole Humphrey, and thank her for sharing those reminiscences through this committee. The thing I know about Michael Connolly is he came later to the profession, and as she alluded to, he had some tough knocks get along the way and had to really work to get admitted to the bar. My recollection of Michael Connolly is he was somebody who was honored at every event I went to that honored people who did pro bono work. I know he received an honor from MVLS 2 years ago for 10 years of real devoted service. And as was mentioned, he received the 2020 Pro Bono Law Firm Award. He was somebody who was a real community lawyer, and he consistently gave back to others through the profession. I want to thank also the always entertaining Mike Lawler from his comments on Bob Winkler. Bob's another person I remember fondly from early Bar Association events. He was a devoted public defender. He went over and above for his clients, and he was someone who was just fun-loving, gregarious, and had a good time. He could always tell a good story. He was active in this association, and he was a longstanding, good, firm member of the profession. And last but not least, I want to thank Pete McDowell for his comments and remarks on behalf of Howard Gerber. He was somebody I knew more of than I knew. And when you pull press clippings, which I did on Howard, he was known best perhaps for the bet that bought him the bar, that bought him a presence in Fells Point. But he was also a lawyer who came to the practice late, but was devoted to it. He had a very larger than life sort of presence at times, but he was a strong representative of the clients that he served. These 6 individuals are a good cross-section of what we get in this association and the profession. They really represent a wide range of people who have devoted themselves to the practice of law and to their communities. So I'm happy we could get together this afternoon and share these thoughts. I want to thank the Memorial Committee for this celebration, particularly Kevin Carr, who has chaired it this year. It's always a real benefit to sit back and look at the lives that we've lost and the things that they've contributed. I didn't mention initially, but I want to go back and mention Anne Marie Cordial, who provided the music before we started the ceremony itself. It was a great introduction, and I appreciate her continued commitment to that. And then, as always, thank Rachel Rocco for her organization of this event. So on behalf of the bench, thank you all for joining us here today.
Thank you very much, Judge Cox. At this time, I'd like to thank all of those who had spoke on behalf of our honorees today. It is important that we honor those members that are no longer with us, as we have for so many years prior to now. Whether we personally knew the honorees today or not, they gave of themselves to our local legal community. I hope that each one of us are able to take away what we heard and remember the contributions that have been given and to use those in our own lives. I also, of course, would love to thank Rachel Rocco, the Executive Director of the Bar Association, for her amazing effort in bringing all this together today, as well as her Executive Assistant, Amber Gaines, to my Vice Chairperson, Neil Tapari, who was of great help, and my fellow committee members, Jennifer Aist, Neil Brown, Harry Chase, the Honorable Judith Enzer, who was also of great help, Rebecca Fleming, the Honorable Bruce Friedman, Christine Hanowski, Peter McDowell, and Lisa Settles. Also, I want to thank Planet Depots for providing Jamie Lorette to record and transcribe the service. And also, as Her Honor mentioned, a special thanks to Anne Marie Cordial for her musical performance. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of so many members of the bench that are present online today, including Judge Chester, Judge Bruce Friedman, Judge Wilson, all from the district court, Judge Dan Friedman from the Court of Special Appeals, on the circuit court, of course, Judge Cox, Judge Jacobowski, Judge Kavanaugh, Judge King, Judge Enzer, Judge Fader and Burns, and Judge Dealey, Judge Nagel, Judge Trufer, Judge Finifter, Judge Stringer, Judge Blue Watts, and lastly but not least, Judge Sherry Bailey. Judge, at this time, I move that these proceedings be transcribed and made part of the official record of this honorable court and the Baltimore County Bar Association, and be presented to the family members of our departed members honored here today.
All right, that is so ordered. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Can you hear me, Kevin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. As president of the Baltimore County Bar Association, I want to thank the entire membership of the Baltimore County Bar and also all the friends and family that attended today. Everyone else has been thanked, so I don't want to repeat that. I do want to echo what Judge Cox said, which is this truly is the highlight of the bar year, this program. I do believe we're one of, if not the only bar association that does this, that honors our members. It's a wonderful affair. And as Judge Cox said, we do learn something about every one of our honorees. I knew a lot of these honorees. I did not know Lewis Kaplan, but I learned today from Alice Young what a ward is. Marty Moylan, I did know. Stuart talked greatly. I know he's a wonderful giver. I had many dinners with Marty at the Justinians. I knew Bob Winkler. I did learn something today. He didn't charge people. I mean, that's an amazing thing to hear about a lawyer. I also learned that Mike Lawler doesn't know how to operate his phones, and that's something we learned today as well. Mike Conley, I knew. I learned he loves to help people. I did know that. Especially someone who attends law school late in life and then to come out and dedicate so much time doing it for free. It's just amazing. Howard Gerber, I did know. Not only did I know of him, I had the opportunity back in the early 80s. I lived in Fells Point when I attended college and in law school. Spent a little bit of time in the horse you came in on. Okay, a lot of time. And one night was breaking up a fight. And Howard Gerber came downstairs in his cashmere overcoat, jumped in the fray, got to know him, did not believe he was a lawyer at the time. This was 1985. He'd been practicing 5 years. And Howard found out I was in night school, struggling, and promptly hired me to be his doorman. And so I was a bouncer at the horse he came in on for about 1.5 years, till I decided that working for George White as a law clerk was a little bit safer than tending to the door at the horse he came in on. But I got to know Howard very well as a character. I did know Pat Cavanaugh and I were from the same area, Dundalk. And back when I was a very young teenager, got in a little bit of trouble that required me to get the name of a good lawyer. And in a bar room, there would always be a fight. Who should I get as a lawyer? And it was always a fight between Billy Evans, Pat Cavanaugh, or John Arnick. And you love to hear that debate. And so I knew of Pat Cavanaugh long before I got to know him. Jumpstart, many years later, I had the pleasure of trying one of Judge Cavanaugh's last civil cases. It was a very complicated case. There were 7 defense lawyers on the other side. We had 20 plaintiffs all consolidated for this one trial. We'd spent years preparing. We're in front of Judge Cavanaugh. He sees a long summer ahead of him. It takes us a week just to pick a jury. And we're a few days into the trial, and Judge Cavanaugh devised the most wonderful way to settle this case. And we had been to 4 mediations. No one could settle this case. But Judge Cavanaugh would come out on the bench, and by day 3, we got the message. He would threaten a mistrial. And lo and behold, we all decided, you know what, this is a case that can be settled. And so that was Judge Cavanaugh. I mean, it was just a great, let me just say that the case got settled with that threat, and it was wonderful. And I really learned a lot from Judge Cavanaugh. So on behalf of your Baltimore County Bar Association, I'm not going to repeat all the thank yous. I want to thank everyone for attending today, and thanks for sharing your very personal comments about members of the Baltimore County Bar Association that actually made the membership better by their membership in it. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Jay. And before I turn it back over to Judge Cox, I just wanted to add thanks to 2 committee members I mistakenly left out, Carl Gold and Christine Malanga, who were also of great service to this committee. Thank you.
With that, thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and this proceeding will stand in recess.